Okay, good morning everybody. After a break last week for Shavuos, we move now to Parshas Shelach. Parshas Shelach deals with the sin of the spies who brought back a negative report about the land of Eretz Yisrael and the catastrophic results that came out of that the Jews were destined to wander for 40 years in the desert. We're not going to talk about that this year. We're going to talk about the very last paragraph of the Parsha that will segue from this story into the next story, next week's Parsha, Parshas Korach. And we're going to talk about the mitzvah of tzitzis. Now I know the ladies are going to say, oh, a class of tzitzis, it has nothing to do with me. Why is the rabbi talking about tzitzis? So the first thing is, it's one of the 613 mitzvahs. So, most women in the world get married to men, and they have husbands, and therefore it's very important that their husbands fulfill this mitzvah properly. And you will see, as the course of the class will unfold, that the mitzvah tzitzis is a mitzvah that every Jew is required to benefit from, and you will see where it ties into him as well. So don't write it off before you heard it. What? We're not. It's not for us to judge anyone here. We're just, and that's one of the first lessons we're going to learn about this. But you'll see it's very relevant on all aspects. So what you have in front of you is the English translation of the section of the Chumash we're looking at. We know the Kriya Shema has 3 paragraphs, and the last paragraph exclusively talks about the mitzvah of tzitzis. So I'm going to just read these relevant psukim in Hebrew, and we'll translate into English. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe Lemor, and Hashem said to Moshe, Daber al bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleim, speak to the Jewish people and tell them, Vasu lahem tzitzis al kanfei v'gdeimu darasam. Tell them to make tzitzis, literally that means fringes, on the corners of their garments for all generations. V'nasnu al tzitzis hakanaf psil tcheles, and you'll put on the fringes, on the corner, a psil tcheles, a thread of bluish wool, dye. According to the biblical requirements, that of the strands, you have really, as much as you think there's 8 strands here, there aren't. There's 4. They're just doubled over. It starts, if you look at, I can't pull my tzitzis all the way up, but it's 4. It's 4 strands that are doubled over with a hole. So 4 becomes 8. So one of the 4 strands should be dyed in a bluish, purplish dye called the techeles. That's what it's dyed with. That dye, and when we had a Beis Hamikdash, you would have one of the 4 strings would be blue. That's the way the mitzvah is supposed to be done. Unfortunately, after the temple was destroyed and the Jews were taken away from their country, the exact tradition where to get this blue dye was lost. This blue dye could only be found from one spot in the world, and it came from a certain fish called the chilazon fish. And it would come up, according to tradition, once every 70 years near the Mediterranean area, and they would catch it. And it was a very complicated process to extract the dye, the proper dye to be used for that. Since the temple was destroyed, we just, practically speaking, weren't able to trace it. There are people today who feel that they have. We've had Hasidic Rebbes in the past who felt they knew what the dye was. Today we have people who feel they know what the dye is. I'm not getting into the debate, should you wear one with a blue strand or not. Obviously I'm showing you that I don't, but I'm not saying people who do are wrong. And there's people in there, I've been to the place in Eretz Yisrael where the person who's doing good work there, he believes he has the blue dye, and they do sell tzitzis with blue dyes. Even though many don't do this, but this is what part of the mitzvah is. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is a good reminder we're in Gullus, because nobody's absolutely sure that we have the right tzitzis 100%. Now everything else we do know, it's got to be wool, and they have to be woven. So these other strands are for sure good, and really even the blue one, it's made out of wool, it's just dyed. All we're lacking is dyeing it. But otherwise, for every other aspect of the mitzvah, we do. So fine, we do that. Continuing the next verse. They will be for you for tzitzis, ureisam also, and you will see it. The tzitzis, you will see it. Uzachartem es kol mitzvahs Hashem, and you will remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. Vasisam also, and you will do them. How will I remember the mitzvahs? So the simple meaning is, the rabbis say, that the word tzitzit has a numerical value of the number 600. There's 2 tzaddis, which are 90, 2 yuds are 10, and the suf is 400, it's 600. And every pair of tzitzis has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double knots, and 8 strands at the end. 5 and 8 is 13. The word tzitzis is 600, so that's how you remember the 613 mitzvahs. That's a very simple way of understanding that. And if a non-Jewish person will ask you, what are those tassels hanging from your pants? You'll tell them it's a religious requirement that we will remember to do all the 613 commands we have in our Torah. And that's all you have to tell to a non-Jew. Why am I saying this? People have asked me. People have asked me this question, so that's the simple answer to give. Anyway, then the pasuk goes on, "V'lo sasur acharei levavachem v'acharei einechem," and you shall not stray after your heart and after your eyes, asher tamsin rechem, which you can stray after. Laman tizkeru, so you should remember, v'asisam es kol mitzvasai, and do all my mitzvahs, v'yisam kedoshim lechem, and you'll be holy to your God. Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hoseisi eskom eretz Mitzrayim v'yosechem lelokim. I am your God who took you out of Egypt to be for you for a God. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am your God. Okay, so we say this twice a day, every morning and every night. This is part of the complete Shema package. There's a mitzvah to say the Shema. The first 2 paragraphs is really the mitzvah of Shema. We add this 3rd one on. So, it's a number of questions over here. I don't know if we're going to get to all the answers for all the questions over here. There's a lot of directives related to the tzitzis. It says, Ureisam also, you will see them, Uzachartem, and you will remember, Vasisam, and you will do, V'lo sasur, and you will not stray. Again it says, Laman tizkeru, so you should remember, V'yisam kedosh, you should be holy people. It seems that this mitzvah of tzitzis is meant to produce a lot of effect on a person. Once you have the tzitzis, you will look at them, you'll remember the mitzvahs, you will do the mitzvahs, you won't stray after your eyes and after your heart. You're going to remember, you will do, you'll be holy. It seems that, it's not just, nice motherhood statements, but it's directly related to tzitzis. So somehow, wearing tzitzis does this for you. If you wear a tzitzis, you're going to be, all these wonderful things are going to happen. You're going to look at them, you're going to remember the mitzvahs, you're going to do the mitzvahs, you're not going to stray after your heart and eyes. You're going to remember, you will do the mitzvahs, you'll be holy. It's a lot of great things, just from putting on tzitzis. Question number 1. Question number 2, there seems to be a double reference to remembering the mitzvahs. It said, in one verse, it says, and you will remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem, and you will do them. And then the verse afterwards says, so that you will remember and do. Why do we need to repeat that? Another question, why, Taka, are women not obliged to wear tzitzis? So the technical answer is that women are freed from time-bound mitzvahs. Any mitzvahs that has a specific time frame in which it must be done, women are not obliged in that mitzvah. I'm not going to get into the reasons for that, but that's the rule. And tzitzis, it says, the time for tzitzis, it can only fulfill the mitzvah in the day and not at night. Torah says, Urisim, so you will see them. So you only can see tzitzis in the day. In nighttime, you can't see them. So nighttime is not a time of mitzvah. So since it's not a time-bound mitzvah, women are not obliged to do that. All right, that's the technical answer to the question. But there must be a deeper reason. If tzitzis is such an important mitzvah, then women seem to lose out by doing such an important mitzvah. And of course, this is one of the areas where the women's rights people get involved in Judaism and suggest that women should wear tzitzis, should wear a talis, should put on tefillin and this and that. Why shouldn't they? Another question is, why is this mitzvah of tzitzis inserted here of all places in the Torah? I mean, it's a standard, it's a mitzvah. So there's a lot of mitzvahs sprinkled throughout the Torah. But this mitzvah is found specifically in Parshas Shelach, which is one of the saddest parshas of the Torah, because where the Jews did the ultimate sin of the spies, which was the first Tisha B'Av, and all Jewish suffering for years to come comes from this event. So why is tzitzis put into this parsha there? And finally, what's this idea of having tzitzis with a blue thread, a blue dye around one of the threads? What's the purpose of that? So if we can get to that, that'll be a very successful morning if we can answer all these questions. Okay, so let's start with the second source. It's a Gemara in Menachos. Gemara Menachos says, what happens if people do not wear tzitzis? Now, wearing tzitzis is a positive mitzvah. It's a positive mitzvah. Let me make this clear. It's a mitzvah that if you have a four-cornered garment, you're forbidden to wear a four-cornered garment if you don't attach tzitzis to the four corners. So if you're wearing a toga or something and it's got four corners, then right on the toga you put on the tzitzis. If you have a suit that has, now like my suit, this is not a corner. This is a rounded corner. It's not a corner, right? But if it wasn't, I have corner here, corner here, corner here, corner there. I'd have to put tzitzis on this. And Jews put tzitzis on their clothing, right? This is cornered, so I don't have to do it anymore. And there was a time when people wore clothing that was cornered, and they affixed tzitzis onto their clothing. It was part of your standard attire to your clothing. Clothing styles have changed. We don't have that anymore. A lot of the clothing's not that way. So therefore, it would come out, you're not obliged to wear tzitzis. Because remember, it's an obligation when you're wearing a garment that has four corners. I'm not wearing a garment that has four corners, so I don't have to put tzitzis. So the rabbi said, you're right, but it's very important to procure for yourself a four-cornered garment so that you will be obliged to do the mitzvah, so you will have the mitzvah in hand, as it were. And that's where the custom is involved, where we buy a special garment. Where when you say, I want to buy a pair of tzitzis, that's the usual expression, really, this is only the tzitzis part. The garment, the white garment, that's just the garment that enables you to wear the tzitzis. Okay, so that's the technical aspects. So if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, you don't put tzitzis, you are violating a positive commandment. If you don't have a four-cornered garment and you're not wearing tzitzis, you're not violating anything, but you're not putting yourself in a position to perform a mitzvah. Do you understand the difference? A person's going around without tzitzis. Is he doing an avera? I can't say he's doing an avera. If he's not wearing a four-cornered garment, he's not transgressing. But I can't say he's performing the mitzvah either. There's a concept, God saying, here's a mitzvah. This is the way to do the mitzvah. God says, well, I'm in luck. I don't have a four-cornered garment. I don't got to do the mitzvah. I'm free, Baruch Hashem. I'm free from having the yoke of that mitzvah. See, some mitzvahs you're not free from. Tefillin you can't get out of. You got to wear tefillin every day, unless you're deathly sick. You got to wear tefillin. So you can say, well, I got out of it. I don't have four-cornered garments. I'll make sure every time I buy a suit that it's a rounded corner. But you're not doing the mitzvah. And we'll see the Gemara tells us that people who do not go out of their way to make sure that they have a four-corner of the mitzvah, Gemara says that when there are times of danger in your life, you shall not assume that you will get divine protection from God. Why? Very simple. You didn't go out of your way to do mitzvahs. You have an opportunity. So God ain't going to go out of his way to take care of you. Plain and simple. The Vilna Gaon on his deathbed, we know, his students saw him crying. And the student said, why are you crying, Rabbi? You know you're going to a good place afterwards. And the Vilna Gaon said, he says, I'm not crying for that, I'm just crying that the opportunity for me to do mitzvahs will now cease as I pass on to the next world. And see how easy it is to do mitzvahs. For a few dollars, you can buy yourself a pair of tzitzis, and the whole day long, every second you have your tzitzis on, you're doing the mitzvah. So easy to do mitzvahs in this world. When we go to the next world, it won't be so easy. But be that as it may, let's take a look at what the Gemara has to say about this idea for those who do not wear tzitzis. Reb Meir said, the punishment for one who neglected to perform the white is greater than the one who neglected to perform the blue. What does he mean? The white means having tzitzis, you have the strands that are white. In other words, a person neglects to put on tzitzis, gets punished. Obviously, we're speaking about a person who has a four-cornered garment that's obliged to wear tzitzis. So the punishment you get for not having tzitzis at all is greater than if you don't put the blue dye on one of the strands. In other words, there's two parts to the mitzvah. Having the white strands. Second part is the blue dye. So the punishment for one who doesn't have the strands is greater than the one who does not put the blue dye on. And the Gemara explains why. To what can this be compared? To a king who commanded his two servants. He asked one to make him a ring seal of clay, and the other he asked to make a ring seal of gold. King wants to see his servant's loyalty to him. I want you to have some kind of ring seal that shows you're a servant to the king. So one he says, I want you to make one out of clay. It's relatively inexpensive. The other one he said, I want you to make a ring seal out of gold, which is very expensive. What happened? They were both negligent and did not make them. Who should get the greater punishment? I would say the one whom he asked to make the ring seal of clay and he didn't. Why? Because what's easier to make? What's easier to get a hold of? Clay or gold? Clay. So if you didn't get gold, you could say, well, it was expensive, it's hard to get, the price of gold is really through the roof now, not easy to get a hold of it. So there are challenges. King's upset, but could understand maybe. But clay, you get clay from anywhere. If you didn't get clay, that just shows you didn't care. So therefore, how does this fit into our discussion here? Well, the clay, meaning the easy to get to, that's the tzitzis made out of the wool. That's the white. The blue dye already, that's like the gold. That's very hard to get a hold of. It's very hard. See, nowadays we don't even have it. So that's harder to get. So therefore, the one who neglects the mitzvah of the white, Hashem punishes more the one who neglects the mitzvah of the blue, because the white was a lot easier. That's the simple interpretation of the Gemara. Since the blue dye is harder to get, the white threads is much easier to get, so Hashem will punish you more. But what do we see? We see that both parts of tzitzis, there's a concept of an emblem of the king. It's like his signature, his imprint. So the question is, how do we see, the rabbis are saying that tzitzis is like an emblem of the king. So how is this an emblem of the king? Another question. And what is the idea of love and the white being more common and the blue being the less common? Okay, what I'm going to tell you now is all from the Sfas Emes Hasidic commentary. There's 3 pieces the Sfas Emes says on tzitzis in this parsha. I hope to get to 2 of them today. Each one is an important piece of information to its own. And the Sfas Emes says the following. When you look at a garment and you come to the corner of a garment, it should evoke certain imagery in your mind. And he says the imagery is to create a mindset for the person to remember the end of what life is. In other words, you got a garment moving, and then they come to a corner, comes to the end. It should remind a person that life does come to an end. And you'll see why in a minute. That life does come to an end. And should focus more on what the goals of what life are all about. That's what a person, when he sees his clothing. Now, the question you're going to ask is, what does the end of a garment have to do with the end of one's life? Why should, when I look at the end of my garment, I should think of the end of my life? So to this, we go to basic Jewish understanding that the centrality of the human being is his soul. And that's who you really are. As a Jew, you are really a soul. The physical body that you have, the better understanding of it is it's merely a garment that allows for the existence of the soul to be in this physical world. A soul cannot live on planet Earth. It cannot. Just like a space astronaut, a human being cannot live in outer space. So to live in outer space, you have to have a spacesuit. Without a spacesuit, you cannot live in outer space. So a soul cannot live on planet Earth unless it's in an Earth suit. And the earth suit is the physical body that you have. With that being the case, that we have to realize what our body is and what our body isn't. And really, our body is merely a garment of the soul. That's all it is. That's all your body is. That's a very important one. Just like the spaceman up in outer space, and let's say you lived in outer space your whole life. Let's say, imagine you have a colony of people living on the moon, right? And they're just living on the moon surface. So that from the day you're born, you're living in a spacesuit. Okay? Would anybody ever think that the spacesuit is the person? Never. Never you'd think the spacesuit is the person. Would it matter how fancy the spacesuit is? The spacesuit's just there to make sure you're alive. It's not who you are. It's not who you are. So, a Jew is a soul. We are a soul. Our soul came from Shemayim. The soul is coming down to earth. Now, Hashem has tailor-made for each soul an earth suit called a body. Now, just like for the spaceman, he's going to take very good care of that spacesuit, because if he knows if he punctures a hole in that spacesuit, he's dead. So, we're obliged to take care of our bodies. Why? Insofar as it's the earth suit that enables us to survive on planet Earth. And if, God forbid, we don't take good care of our body, the soul will have to leave this world. And it's to that extent only do we take good care of our body and feel that a body is important, but for nothing else. So, when you look at a garment that will have, that's cornered, that will have tzitzis, we're supposed to be reminded the myths of tzitzis, because they're placed on a corner of a garment. And when you look at those tzitzis and you're looking at a corner of a garment, we're to be reminded that in this world, what we are is a soul, and we carry a garment upon it, which is the body. So the focus is that life in the physical realm has an end. Just like corners creates the size for the garment. If a garment was of unlimited length, there'd be no corners. Just go on and on and on. But it stops. And especially when it comes to a corner, that means that's it. That's as far as it goes. The garment does not go any further. Now that garment is right on your body. And that's saying that on a deeper level, your body is a garment. And it only goes so far. And there's only so much attention you should be giving to your body. Life in the physical realm has an end. There are corners. There's a size to it. There's limitations. And a person has to know this. Very important for a person to know this at all times. Now, I do not want you to be thinking that this is going to be a very morbid class. But the fact of the matter is, when you realize that there's a limitation to our physical existence, you'll think more seriously about concepts of meaning in life, purpose of life, that extend well beyond the garment. In other words, the question basically is, where are we focusing our energies of life on? Are you focusing your energies on what the body wants? But you remember, that body is a very temporary suit. It's not who you are at all. These ideas are very difficult to understand. You live in a world that says the exact opposite. It's every day you look at the billboards, you watch the magazines, everything, the body sells everything. Everything is around the body. That's not what the Torah says. The body is valuable, no question about it. But no more valuable than a spacesuit would be to a spaceman. And this reminds us of the mortality of the body, which is a similar idea to Pirkei Avos, the third section, third source. The rabbis tell us, consider three things and you will not come into the grip of sin. If you think about three things, you'll never even come close to sinning. Not saying you won't sin, you won't even come into the grips of sin. You won't even think to do an Aveira. What is that? Know whence you came, where you are going, and before whom you will give justification and reckoning. Now it repeats. Whence you came, from a putrid drop. Where you are going, to a place of dust, worms, and maggots. And whom you will give justification and reckoning, before the King who reigns over kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Okay, you learn such a Mishnah. What is the point of that Mishnah? Right? Sounds pretty depressing. You know what you are? You're just a putrid drop, you little nothing. What are you going to be? Lunch for the worms. And then Wendy, you're going to have to answer to God. Right? So what's the Mishnah really saying? What's the Mishnah really saying? It's saying don't build your body up as the central meaning of your life. Something that comes from nothing and ends up as nothing, that can't be what you're all about. So don't make it your total identity. That's all. So when you get off of that mistaken identity, once you are released from that false thought, then you can begin living with your true identity, which is what? This is your soul. And then you're going to look for a deeper meaning in life. So the intent of conceptually burying the body isn't merely to give man a morbid, fatalistic attitude, but rather to play down the significance of the body. And to the degree that the body is played down, a person has the ability to wrestle and confront the fact that there's something more central to his existence, which is his neshama. And as long as the body looms as the central, greatest part of your identity, then the neshama appears to be very, very small. And to the degree that the body is small in your eyes, then the soul can loom large. So if you put your body in the right perspective, you have a true identity of the person who's going to emerge. This explains, for example, why there's a concept of fasting from time to time during the year. What do we do? What's the purpose of fasting? When you don't eat for a whole day, a person can begin to sense the spiritual dimensions that the person has. If you're not spending time taking care of the body, you got time to start thinking of the soul. And that's the same idea from Shabbos. Similar idea. You know, on Shabbos you're not working, you're not doing a lot of things that you normally do with a body, but you're focusing more on spiritual things. It's the same idea. Play down one area so you can build up the other area. Play down the overinflated value and identity of the body so you can increase the true identity of the soul that you have. You can never feel that both are central. Either there's always something that's primary and there's something that's supplementary. You can't have them both be primaries. They have opposite desires. So this Mishnah is saying you got to know what's the main thing. Now it's interesting, the commentaries say, why didn't the rabbis in Pirkei Avos say, consider three things and you'll never come to the grips of sin? Number one, know where you came from, a putrid drop. Say it together. Where are you going to? Worms and maggots. Who are you going to give an answer to God? That's not what it says. It says the three questions without clarifying it, and then it clarifies the three questions. Why is it kind of repeating itself? The answer is there's really two ways to look at this Mishnah. You could say like this. You can consider three things you'll never come to sin. Number one, where did you come from? You know where you really came from? You came as a holy soul underneath God's throne of glory. That's where you're really coming from. You're a holy soul. That's where you're coming from. And where are you going? You know where you're really going? That soul's going to go back to Hashem and come back into Hashem's arms and reap all the benefits. And who are you going to give a judgment to? God is going to reward you for all the things you sold in this world. This is the way you're supposed to. No, if you knew that, you'd never come to sin. If you knew how holy your neshama was and how much good Hashem has planned for you on your return, you wouldn't get mixed up in these Narishkeiten. And the description of these is so amazing we can't even describe them. But on the other hand, if you don't want that to work well, then I'll give you another interpretation. In other words, if you're looking at the soul, if you're looking at your soul, where your soul came from, where your soul's going, where your soul, you wouldn't sin. That's a real good way of looking at things. If you're not into that mindset, if you're thinking your body's important, now let's talk about your body. Your body comes from nothing, it's going to turn into nothing, it's only going to get you into trouble. So what's the Mishnah saying? Again, Judaism is not saying ignore your body. Judaism is not saying it. Judaism is saying do not give it central focus in your life. Not central focus. Central focus is your neshama, and therefore God in His Torah will tell you how much care you have to give for your body. Yes, the Torah says you should be a hygienic person, and you shouldn't cause disease on your body, because you don't want that earth suit to get sick. And yes, you feed the body enough that it can allow the soul to operate within the body. But don't go crazy over it. Don't do all kinds of multi-million-dollar expenses so the body will look nicer. Because it's all a waste of time. You're going to get rid of that body anyway. Okay, now there's a lot you can talk about, so according to that, you shouldn't have to have plastic surgeries and things of that. And the truth is, that's correct. What if I do this? Does that mean I'm a terrible person? It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It's a continuum. There's a continuum. Everyone has a body. Everyone has a soul. The question is, which one do you sense is more central in your life? And it's a continuum. And everyone's going to fall somewhere in the continuum. But you got to realize that if you want to have a healthy way of looking at who you are, the true identity is your soul. The body is not your true identity. And that is like so primary to Judaism. If you don't get this idea, then you can't function within the religion. You cannot function within the religion. Because what does a body get out of you going to a Chumash class? What does a body get out of you praying? What does a body get out of giving tzedakah? What does a body get out of being a moral person? The body is just interested in what the body wants. So this is the critical point. And this is the point of the blue and the white. The white, the emblem of clay. The blue, the emblem of gold. They're both the body and soul. They're both created by God. And in that sense, a person can learn about God by looking at your body, by looking at your soul. You can learn a lot about God. Look at your body, the miracles of the biological balance and chemistry in your body. You could see God in your body too. The body is also an emblem of God. Man is in the image of God in many ways. I can't wax mystically now to explain to you. You have a right. You're symmetrical. You have a right side. You have a left side. Just like you spiritually have free will choice. You can go to the right. You can go to the left. There's all kinds of, from the body you can see a lot. The point of the mitzvah of tzitzis is you have the love and you have the white. That reminds us of the physical garment, white, clay of the body. Man comes from the earth. Man comes from the ground. Clay, body, it's all the same thing. That's one part. Blue is symbolic of the soul. It's symbolic of the soul. And that's gold. What do we know? Why blue? Look at source number 4. The Talmud says, why was purple blue selected rather than any other color? Why not green? Why not red? What's blue? What's the source about blue? Well, if you take a look at the blue, what does blue remind you of? When first word comes to your mind when you think of blue, then you say the ocean. And when you look at the ocean, what do you see when you look at the ocean? You see the horizon, you see the sky. When you see the sky, it reminds you of the divine throne of glory that's above. That's what the color of blue. The color of blue reminds you of God's throne of glory. So and that's where your soul comes from. When you look at blue, blue is a color that reminds you of the soul. Because blue is the water, is the sky, it's Hashem. That's what who made you, that's the soul that's there. So in order to appreciate that emblem of gold, which means the purple dye, you have to deal with the emblem of clay. You have to deal with both emblems. You have to work on not letting yourself get sunken into the physical, and don't make the physical the identity that you think life is worth living for. Because if you don't go through that process, you're never going to identify with the gold. You're never going to identify with the soul. So that's why it says the punishment of not having the white is worse than not having the blue. Meaning that's why it's so critical to work on the white. If you don't work on the white, you'll never appreciate the blue. If a person always thinks my purpose in life is to have fun, to enjoy life, my body should be happy, whatever my body wants, that's what I should give it, you're never going to come to appreciate that you have a blue soul. So the Talmud says, address the issue of the physical garment, understand it as a garment, understand that garments are what you put on and you take off. The only thing you hope that is unchangeable is the human being, the wearer, right? Styles change, but your body doesn't change. So the same thing. the body, which is symbolic of the garment of the soul, it's the same thing. So we have to start off by determining which things are changeable, which things are temporary, and which are not. If a person, God forbid, thinks that his garment is the person, he's in trouble. And there is such a saying out there, right? What do they say? The clothes make the man. Which is true and not true, depending on who's saying it. If it's a soul-focused person, they'd never say that. A body person will definitely say that. If a person says, I don't have to be or do anything in life, I just have to wear the right clothes, right? You may get certain things in life by that, but there aren't going to be the things that we want to discuss over here. If you're saying, I got to wear, I'm having an important meeting, I have to wear a power tie. I have to wear a sharp suit, and this and that. These are not who you really are in life. And that's Torah saying, tackle the garment. Realize there are certain things that are garments to your being, and then there are things that are you. And he's saying you'll never come to understand what you are as long as you identify yourself by your clothes. That's what tzitzis is reminding you of. All that, when you're wearing a pair of tzitzis, that's what it reminds you. You see the end of the garment, that's the end of life. A garment is the end of life. There's white and there's blue. There's a body and there's soul. So, they're both emblems of God. The physical body, gives us a whole thing we got to work out. We have our challenges. And there's really a certain aspect of being an eved, a servant. You got to work out something for the master. Work's got to be done. Got to clarify things, put things in perspective. There is that emblem of clay, to realize what it means that there's just a body. And then you have the tcheles, you have the purple, that's the emblem of the soul. The soul suggests we're children of Hashem. A soul is a property that directly comes from Hashem. We're children of Hashem because of our soul, because that's the part of us that's most compatible with Hashem. So that really shows our yichus, it shows our pedigree. The fact that we have a soul means we're God's children. We're very special people. We got a body, that's a different thing. So now the question is, so where are we going now with this idea here? This is the point I'm trying to get to here. Why do we do mitzvahs? Why do we do mitzvahs? So you say to connect to Hashem. That's true. But the idea, all mitzvahs, they draw a spiritual light. They draw a spiritual energy into this physical world. Every time you do a mitzvah, it's meant to accomplish something. You may or not be aware of it. If you're not aware of it, you're accomplishing something. If your child mistakenly presses 911 on the phone, they don't realize they called the emergency to come. But it's coming even though you realize it or not. When you're doing a mitzvah, something's going on. God is sending you a line. You may realize it, you may not realize it. So what is tzitzis accomplishing? What does it draw down into this world? When you wear a pair of tzitzis, what is being drawn down into this world? Because every mitzvah is a vehicle to draw something down. So God put into tzitzis. That's the miracle of mitzvahs. Whenever you do a mitzvah, a special energy comes down. The power that you will get if you put on tzitzis is that if a person looks and observes the tzitzis, the person becomes closer in having the true perspective of who he is. He comes clearer to understand he's a spiritual being and he's not a physical being. That's what the mitzvah of tzitzis will help you understand. And if you put tzitzis on every day with that understanding, you will walk around after time realizing I am a soul, I am not a body. I'm not get carried away with what the body has. Right? That's embodied in the mitzvah of tzitzis. If you observe it, you'll be able to tackle the struggle. Why do we do Averis? Why do we do Averis? Because we get too caught up in the physical as opposed to the spiritual. We just don't think that we're a spiritual being. We identify with the physical. We identify too much with the physical, you're going to make mistakes. So God gives us the clarity of knowing who we are through doing the mitzvah of tzitzis. By doing the tzitzis every day, I just don't do it. Now remember, in all mitzvahs, it's not just you do it and don't think. You do it and you think. You're making a bracha. Sher k'yishem tzivanu al mitzvah tzitzis. You command us to have a mitzvah tzitzis. This mitzvah is supposed to make me close to you. How does it make me close to you? Because I'm looking at the tzitzis, I'm looking at the corner, I'm looking that that's something that my body comes to an end. that body is not the be-all and end-all. There's white strands, there's blue strands. There's, I think of my soul. And even though right here I see my body and my soul looks very small, but that's only because it's in this world. But up there, that big one is the soul. And how am I living my life? To further the interest of the soul or to further the interest of the body? And I'm not going to be fooled by what I see. How far this goes, the Torah tells a very interesting story in source number 5. The Torah tells a story. There's a man who was particularly careful about wearing tzitzis. One day the Yetzer Hara got the better of him. And he arranges a rendezvous with a woman that he should not be rendezvousing with. Okay, and he's prepared. He's getting to the point where he's coming to her place of residence, or place of business rather, and he is prepared to take the final step, as it were. And as he's removing his clothes, the Talmud uses the expression, his tzitzis flew up and slapped him in the face. You know, it's like when somebody next door to you, the guy next to you puts on his tzitzis, right? And wham, you get whacked with the tzitzis, right? So he take off his tzitzis, just whacked him in the face. And he said, and then what happened when that happened, and that's at a real moment of passion, ready for action. He recoiled, walked to the side, said, forget it. And the woman says, anything wrong? Something you don't like? He said, Hashem gave us a commandment to observe a mitzvah called tzitzis, and I cannot do this. Now, did the tzitzis actually slap him in the face? I don't know if they actually slapped him in the face. But tzitzis gave the person the strength to be able to not compromise his true identity, which is the neshama, to compromise that with his changing garment identity, which is his body. So the point is, the mitzvah tzitzis isn't Hashem showing you He's your boss and giving you challenges in life to make life difficult for you. This you do, this I don't, this you don't do. No, governments make laws to control you. Hashem's not making laws to control you. Hashem is giving you mitzvahs to help you not make mistakes, to help you be on focus. Hashem knows we need help, we need nurturing, we need strengthening in order to live up to what we really are. So Hashem constructed mitzvahs as a support system which we need to give us the strength to deal with these challenges. Now, it doesn't mean, you could wear tzitzis and watch, read porno, and it isn't going to work. Well, I'm wearing the tzitzis, it's going to protect me from everything. That's not going to work. Hashem didn't give us, Hashem didn't give us mitzvahs from this exalted, distant place. It has nothing to do with us. He says, I understand your humanness, I understand your challenges, and Hashem is saying, with you to win your challenges in life, you need a garment to remind you of the changeable garments that exist in life. You need to have different perspectives on life. So now, if you read the psukim back in the beginning over there, it says, if you do this, you will not stray after your eyes and after your heart. Right? The word znus, zona means straying away. So what are we saying? So you won't stray from what? So you won't stray away from who you are. You're really a soul. The problem is all the seductive stuff out there makes you stray away from who you really are. And if you wear the tzitzis, it will help you to not stray. You won't start exploring after your hearts and after your eyes, which can have a tendency to make a person stray away. The point is, tzitzis have a way of giving you that inner strength so you won't stray from the true identity of what you are. And that's what Rashi says in Source 6. The heart and the eyes are the spies of the body. Spies, interesting. They act as agents for sinning. The eye sees, the heart covets, and the body commits the sin. When you do Averis, your eyes see it, right? Your heart wants it, you do the Avera. Why? Because you're looking what the body wants. This is part number 1 of the Sfas Emes, which is only going to be really helpful once I get to part 2. Once I have the foundation, part 2 gets very, very practical. But even part 1 is very practical. So, Bekitzer, what have we said so far? Why do we wear tzitzis? To do what? To remember that we are souls and we are not bodies. Okay? If you know you're a soul and not a body, then you're going to be focused in a different direction. How does that remind me? I look at the garment, it comes to an end, Just like my garment of my soul, my body comes to an end. There is blue, there is white, that's the clay, that's the physical body. I think that's a really important thing, but no, it really isn't the important thing. It's the blue thread that reminds me of the ocean, it reminds me of the sky, it reminds me of the throne of glory from which my soul came from. And to realize that just like a garment can be put on and taken off, and it's not who I really am, I should never once mistakenly think that that's my identity. My identity is my neshama. And if you know that, then when you look at the world, you look at the world with those kinds of eyes. Okay? Everyone clear on the first part? And therefore, you're not going to take your body too seriously. I said too seriously. You take it seriously to the point that's an effective tool of the soul. That means you have to make sure you're healthy. Yes. And whatever a doctor says is what you have to do to be healthy, that's what you do. What's beyond that, that's another story. We're going to talk about, does that mean we shouldn't have any cosmetics and this and that? It depends. Again, a person has to be mentally healthy too. Can you imagine if a person's walking, an Orthodox Jew walking around and they only think they're a body? Do you know any Orthodox Jews like that? I know a lot like that. You're an Orthodox Jew, you do 613 mitzvahs, and you think you're a body. Right? I do these rules because God makes me do these rules. Loving God, I don't love God. You do it, you're a Jew. This is tradition, you do this. But you're a body. You think you're a body. You walk, talk, think like a body. Right? So now the person says, so I'd like to wear, I want to get some cosmetic surgery. So now they ask the rabbi. The rabbi sees the person that's in front of him is a total body person. Is the rabbi going to be wise to say, no, you shouldn't do it? It would not be wise for a rabbi to tell a body person they shouldn't do it, because that person will go nuts. You've destroyed their life, because they don't see life anything beyond that. Right? And as long as there's no halachic problems, a person's not putting their life in danger, the rabbi will say, if you really feel it's necessary, go ahead and do it. If, on the other hand, a spiritual person comes to the rabbi and says, I'd like to have some cosmetic surgery, the rabbi's going to say, but you do know you're a soul, don't you? He says, yeah, I do know I'm a soul. So why do you need it? Say, you're right, Rabbi. I was just seeing everybody else doing it. I thought it was important to do it. You're right, I won't do it. Do you understand? I'm afraid to use the word flexibility in halacha here because people are going to get the wrong idea. But if you have an Orthodox Jew who thinks they're a body, as long as we're not talking about violating halacha. A person says, Rabbi, can I work on Shabbos? I need to make more money. The rabbi says, sorry, Shabbos isn't mine to give away. You have to say no. But there's this gray area. It's like the person's spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 with Botox and this and that, so they will look pretty. So why do you need to look pretty? Well, my whole self-esteem comes from me looking pretty. And if the person really feels that way, and the rabbi's going to say, well, the Torah says you can't do it, then the person will have no self-esteem. And if they have no self-esteem, they may just fall right off the wheels and not even be a practicing Jew. So we can't legislate areas in this gray area of how the person's going to feel about themselves. God can't legislate you have to live like a soul. Either you're going to come to terms with reality or not. If you don't, let's at least do the mitzvahs. And there's nowhere in the Torah does it say you can't have cosmetic surgery. Certain things the Torah says you can't make tattoos, you can't do other things. Guys, I want to make a tattoo. Well, the Torah says you can't do that. Finished. No matter what, no matter how much of a body person you are, it says black and white. You can't make a tattoo on your body. Finished. You can't do it. Done. I want to just, my nose a little too long. I want to make it a little shorter. I want to take growth hormones. I don't want to be short. I want to be really tall. So then, how do you answer the question? The answer is, well, what kind of person are you? Now, the rabbi has to be, careful how he says this. He can't, be direct. But if he feels the person coming is a body kind of person, the person will not be able to emotionally deal with this. So then, okay, fine, do it. But the person realizes, I'm just a neshama, I'm just a soul. It's a very nice garment God gave me. He gave it the way it is. And guess what this garment does? When you get older, skin starts to sag. It does. It's just natural. And that's God's kindness to let you know time's running out. The hair starts to turn white and you start losing it. God's saying time is running out. Make sure you have enough baggage for the long trip, man. Because if you look young and pretty forever, you think you're going to live forever, and then you're going to be caught without any baggage. So God, it's a great kindness. You're looking older and older and older. Why do women have to look prettier than men? That's a problem that the men have. All right? It's a problem that the men have. If a man has a wife who's not attractive, he's going to get himself into trouble. All right? That's another issue. But you got to realize that there comes an end to life. So tzitzis is a great savior. You're putting on the tzitzis so you'll have it truly ingrained that you understand exactly what's going on. So now the women are thinking more. So women are saying, so how come we should wear tzitzis, right? I've convinced you all to want to wear tzitzis now, right? Mm-hmm. So hang on. Now we got to take it to the second part, which is most critical. It's all based on the first part. If you don't get the first part, the second part doesn't. Slasam is another section of the Parsha. It says like this. Human beings have a tendency to look at externals and make judgments based on that. Why? Because that's what you see. So, which is truly not a logical way of looking at things. When you see things, your eyes see, and then the mind starts making judgments on what the eye sees, that's a very dangerous game. Because one thing is for sure, seeing is not believing. What do they say? Believe nothing what you hear and only half of what you see is a very good statement. You know, I can give you a very mundane example. Why is it that many men happen to want to look at women who don't wear a lot of clothes in the summertime? There is a great drive for men to do that. And now I hear even women have a great drive to see men who are scantily clothed. Why? They get a pleasure out of looking at a pretty body. Now, if you look at it from an intellectual point of view, that's the most absurd thing you could do. Like, what do you see? Just some flesh? It's a big deal. You know, go to a doctor. Doctor doesn't get turned on by patients. You know, they ask a question, how is a Jewish doctor, a man, allowed to be with a female patient in the same room? Isn't there going to be halachic problems? So the Gemara has a very blunt response to that. The Gemara says, when a patient's in front of the doctor, he sees the person as a hunk of flesh, like in the meat market. Meaning to say that the doctor, we hope, has been trained to the point that he looks at his patients scientifically and not emotionally. He doesn't come up with all kinds of emotional connections to this body. He has no sensual connotations of the body. He's a clinician. He's a scientist. I have to observe what's there, and I have to come to a decision. I don't ascribe any virtues to this person. This person is a body that I have to come up and see what's wrong with that person, what's right with that person. There's no sensuality in the medical office. But as once the doctor goes out the door of his office and he goes into his car with a patient, then all the laws come back. Right? Meaning to say, well, if you're not a doctor, so what is this? Men get attracted to beautiful women, which is a narishkeit. Because that's only addressing you're in love with a spacesuit. It's narishkeit. It's not the person. Right? But that's what they do. That's what they do. So a person has a tendency, says the Sfas Emes, listako b'chitzonius, to look at externals and decide that that's the reality. And the Sfas Emes says to train yourself to focus that what's on the outside is not what's main. But what's on the inside is main. The Sfas Emes says to be able to train yourself the way he calls that a dover gadol. That's a big thing. That's a big accomplishment. If you can train yourself to not judge by what you see as the reality, that does not come easy. To be able to develop a discipline, to not be drawn in by your superficial gaze, is a very big thing. And says the Sfas Emes, when you put, it's here, I wrote it down. Right? That's the last source over there. Right? It is a great thing to constantly be attracted to the inside and not straight to the superficial outside gaze which appears to people. to only be subservient to God and gaze at only what God commands you to gaze at, which is the intrinsic life force of God, which is in everything. Hashem wants you to look at what the spiritual content of people and of things. Hashem wants you to look at things, where does it fit into God's global spiritual plan for the world? So it says in Hashem, when you put on tzitzis, it can help you. First step was, tzitzis helps you to focus on the soul and not the body. Your main thing is the soul, not the body. Now the soul, can anybody see a soul? No. What do you see the body? We tend to judge by what we see. What you see is the body. The body's the main thing. No, the body's not the main thing. The soul's the main thing, but I don't see the soul. So what does that mean? You got to train yourself to not go what your eyes are seeing. Can't believe what your eyes see. Right? So when you put on tzitzis, it gives you the power. Hashem gives you a power to be able to have what we will call an inner gaze. To be able to see things beneath the surface. To gaze only of what Hashem wants you to take in. That which is inside and not the physical, superficial outside. So the Sasama says, if a person does that, then Hashem will set up for that person a completely different order and rule of nature for that person. He will be able to look at the world differently than everybody else around. Why? Because if he doesn't get sucked up into the natural teva of the world, the natural world is everything's by the outside. What you see on the outside, that's the scientist says is the whole world. But he says, no, the outside, it's just the outside. That's just superficial. But there's inside so much more. If the real context of your life of what's going on inside, then you're living in a much more direct relationship with the source of all of creation, as opposed to the outgrowth of nature, which is outside of the source of creation. In other words, what direction are you linking up to? If you believe that the outside world is the whole world, everything you see is the whole world, and nature has power and all that, then the human being becomes vulnerable and you're controlled by that which you pay most attention to. A human being is controlled and is vulnerable to what he thinks is important. If you think having a good body is important, that's going to control you. And that's what you're going to look at your whole life. You're going to look at everything. Your whole life is meant that way. If a person, if you pay attention to those things, and that will control you. You won't, if you gain 5 pounds, your whole life is ruined. The people, their lives are controlled by looking at the scale every minute, everything, looking in the mirror, making sure everything fits in. I'm not saying you shouldn't look messed up, but overboard, and their whole Shabbos is ruined. They ate a couple extra pieces of cake. Oh, I gained 2 pounds. I'm finished. I'm done. Clothing not going. They go crazy about it. Hashem doesn't want you to suffer that way. Really. If you're worried, I don't know, did I do enough chesed? Was I really nice to that person? Did I say the right thing? That's what Hashem wants you to be absorbed with. That's a whole, you can have 2 people going to shul and they're two different worlds. One person looking, okay, let me see who got the new designer dress over here. Ooh, that person must have spent $500 on that. That person really, I don't know how they have the money to pay for that. That's very expensive stuff. That's a very sophisticated, that's a schlepper over there. That's one way of looking at it. The other person walks in the room and says, who do I need to do a chesed for? Why, that person looks like they're so sad. Must be something wrong. Let me go over to them. Let me help them. That's a different way of looking at the world, right? And if you have this inner gaze, then you're not controlled by the outward physical things of life, but you're rather controlled by the one who created that, and that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Hashem. So there's examples for this. You go back to source number 7 by Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu couldn't have children. So before the covenant between the parts, what does Hashem tell Avram? He says to Avram, he says he took him outside. He took Avram outside. Source number 7. And he brought him outside. Now Avram had said to him, Son of Universe, I have gazed at the constellation which rules my destiny, and see that I'm not fated to have children. He said, I know I was born under a certain constellation. People born under this don't have kids, which is true. So God says, go out of the astrological speculations. The Jewish people are not subject to Mazal. Ein Mazal Yisrael. Jews are not subject to planetary influence. What is God saying to Avram? Taught him a great insight. Avram thought whatever the natural world is, that's the way life is. If nature deals you this dice, that's what you have. There's nothing to do to change it. To which Hashem said, if you're a non-Jew, that's true. But if you're a Jew, that's not true. Because nature is only the superficial manifestation of God in this world. If you only believe in that as being the source of your life, then you're hooked into that source and you're stuck to that source. You're not going to get anything. But if you believe, you go outside of that realm, beyond the laws of nature. If you can look deeper than what's going on, then different rules of nature will apply to you. Hashem goes, go outside of your astrological influence. Get out of locking yourself into believing that you're not going to bring a child into the world because the zodiac said not. No, the physical realms do not control you. You go to the source of the physical realms, and that's Hashem. And Hashem might give you whatever you want. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that the very beginning of the Jewish people did not start from the framework of nature. The first Jewish child was Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was not a normal baby. Did not come through nature. Nature said there'll be no children for Abraham and Sarah. Absolutely not. She didn't even have a womb. How could she have kids? The stars had destiny she shouldn't have. The stars were right. She's not going to have. Hashem said, Jews are not ruled by nature. Biggest proof is, you have a sterile woman who's going to have a healthy baby. Finished. That's the roots of the Jewish people. That's where we come from. We wouldn't be a people without that. So it starts from that which was drawn from outside the limitations of nature, beyond nature. So now, what does the Sfas Emes do with all this? He says, so if you look, so in other words, we have a choice in life. Do we look at what we see, or do we look at what's beneath the surface? What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? If you look at the inside and not at the outside, this idea, it's not just, a nice idea, but it becomes the what do you call it? The schema. It becomes your Weltanschauung, which governs and dominates and nurtures and feeds your life. The question you have to ask yourself, where do you grow from? Do you grow from superficialities, or do you grow from what's inside? That is the bottom line. What kind of person are you? We say, are you a superficial person, or are you a deep person? People like to use those words. Deep. I'm deep, yeah. Superficial people listen to rock music. I'm deep. I do classical. They're both superficial. Superficial means you just look at what you see out there. Or deep means you see there's a God behind this. You see there's a spiritual entity behind this. Do you look at yourself as a body? Do you look at yourself as a soul? How do you look at another person? How do you look at food? How do you look at everything? There's a way to look at everything in this world. Do you look at it superficially, or do you look at there's a spiritual content to everything that's much deeper? Every single thing in this world. Now, why is that so important? Now we're going to come back to the spies and see how destructive this is. This is the whole story of the spies. The spies go out and they go to check out the land. And what was their purpose? Will we be able to conquer the land? Right? Will we be able to conquer the land? So what did they come back and say? Basically they say, by the laws of nature, we will not be able to conquer the land. There are giants over there, just strong. We're not. So many more of them than us. We cannot conquer the land. Now, where was their opinion formulated from? A deeper look or from a superficial look? Just what we saw. We saw what's going on over there. People dying left and right. Funerals every day. It's a crazy land. It's a land that eats up its inhabitants. There's giants there. We felt like grasshoppers, right? That's what they were looking at. And a Jew is forbidden to look at the world that way. And God said, if you're going to look at the world that way, you're not going to go to Eretz Yisrael. So the question is, so why should we go? Very simple. God had promised the patriarchs, He promised Moshe, He promised everybody, you will go in the land, and I will make sure that you conquer the land. What does that really mean? It means nature says it's impossible, and God says, not only is it possible, it will happen successfully. So now the question is, which one do you believe? Which one you believe? The one you nurture from. If your whole life you think you're a body, your whole life you look at superficialities, then everything in your life is dictated by what superficial nature says is going to be, and that's how life is. And if you would have lived that way, then Yitzchak would never have been born. If you say, no, I know there's a physical world, but that's only superficial. That's only skin deep. I got to go beneath that. Beneath that, there's a God who created all this. And beneath that, there's a will of God that wants everything done in a particular way. So then it can say, well, if God said we're going to get it, it doesn't matter what my eyes see. It's not a question of what my eyes see. It's what's beneath the surface. And beneath the surface, God has said, don't worry, these giants are nothing. You don't have to worry about them. Right? That's how it is in so many things in life. When you have to make decisions in life, you always are we making the decision based on the superficial view or the deeper view? Right? So when you look at things, says the Sfas Emes, every time you look, it's, so to speak, it's like you're eating a meal. Why? Because it becomes the blood and flesh of your existence. It becomes you. You know, the more you look at things and identify the way you look at it, that's how you're going to be. So, a person's concept of self is defined by how he looks at the world. So, let's look at this in terms of, let's say, confidence in being able to do mitzvahs. Do we feel, we all struggle with our mitzvah observance? How successful do we think we're going to be? So if we're the kind of people that, look at things superficially, and if you're a man, you can't tear yourself away from a beautiful-looking woman, or if you're a woman, you can't tear yourself away from the next clothing store. You can't tear yourself away, and that's the way you look at things. Then when you hear a rabbi talking about spiritual goals that are beyond you, you say, I'm never going to reach it. It's too hard. It's too hard to get up in the morning to daven. It's too hard not to talk Lashon Hara. It's too hard to keep kosher. It's too hard to learn a lot of Torah. It's too hard to be nice to people. Why? Why do we say that way? Because we've locked ourselves into a superficial view of life, and we can't go beyond it. If you think the world is superficial, you think that nature runs the world, then it does control you. And then that which you can't do naturally, you can't do. You can't muster up any strength to go against it, and you don't, and you're stuck. And that's what the Sfas Emes says at the end. He says, everyone should know that in every mitzvah in service of God, although it may appear to the eyes of man that it is not of the strength to approach them, either due to previous sins or low spiritual self-image, this is all external. And the ideas of the evil inclination are telling you not to do this. But a person must believe that he is able to fulfill every mitzvah with God's help. You can do every mitzvah. There's no such thing as a Jew saying, I can't do this mitzvah. It's too hard. It's not possible. It's only possible if you live a superficial life. If you live with the chitzonius, you live with nature, and that dictates your life. But if you understand there's a deeper essence to all this, and there's a will of Hashem, then the will of Hashem is that you should be successful in your Yiddishkeit. And you have to believe that that exists, even if you felt not. And the Jews had many reasons why they believed the spies. Not just that the giants were big. They knew last week's Parsha, they sinned big time. They did 3 Averos in Parshas Balosecha. Big ones. And they said, you know what? We have so many sins with us, we're not going to be successful. The only way we could be successful is God to do miracles. And He ain't going to do miracles for us because we're a bunch of schmoes. So Sfas Emes says, not true. You made mistakes? True. Who says you can't do tshuva? And maybe the very fact that you're willing to listen to God now when it doesn't make sense to you, that will be the very tshuva that will make you successful. How do you know that's not what God had in mind? And that's exactly what Hashem had in mind. So therefore, that's why it's very much into this parsha. So now, let's connect this all to tzitzis now. Let's put everything together now and see how this is a beautiful thing. The first piece of this Sfas Emes says, don't confuse the garment for the person. Don't confuse the false identity for the true identity. That's number one. Number two, if a person disciplines and trains himself not to get caught in the garments of life, but into what the true identity of life is, you'll come to realize that you have much more strength to do the things that are demanding in terms of quality and content. You'll be nurturing a strength that will defy all the laws of what's normal, of what our normal attitudes are, that we're not able to do these things. So therefore, the mitzvah of tzitzis is saying to us that tzitzis enables a person to do mitzvahs Hashem. Since you're hooked to the inside, there's no mitzvah that's beyond you. That's what the mitzvah tzitzis is saying. Now you understand why it says if you look at the tzitzis, you'll be able to do all the mitzvahs. Why do we say I can't do all the mitzvahs? Because I can't do all the mitzvahs, that's why. Why can't you? Because my body says I can't do it. The God says that's your first mistake. Your first mistake is you think if your body says that's the way it is, and that's not. That's the earth suit. That's not you. You come from a much deeper place. You can do anything. You can mamish do anything if you understood where you come from. If you know where you really come from, you know what's inside you. You can do anything. And then you're able to do all the mitzvahs. You know, so tzitzis is a garment of service. It helps you do your job. A policeman. Does a policeman go around in his weekday clothes? He wears a special policeman suit. It reminds him that he's a policeman. You know, you're wearing, you're a soldier, you're a policeman, you look nice. Policemen look nice, they have nice clothing. But he knows every second he's wearing, I'm a policeman. When I'm off duty, I'm off, but I'm on duty. A Jew wears his tzitzis, that's his police clothes. He knows he's on duty all the time. So the concept of tzitzis on the first level, don't get involved in mistaken identification. The second level, you have a suit of clothes that's for your job, which is to grow from the mitzvahs that you're supposed to do. So Hashem is saying, wear that suit of clothes which is appropriate for your job. And that's what the 7 says. The second time it says, Laman Tizkaru. First time it says you should remember and do the mitzvahs. Second time it says just to remember. He's saying, remember what? Remember who you are. Don't forget who you are. And if you're the person who connects to the inner realities, then that's the thing you got to remember. And if you remember that, then when you look at the tzitzis, you can do all the mitzvahs. That's what it's saying, and that's why it's such a powerful mitzvah. So now, how is this more practical? If it's not practical enough, but let's talk about in terms of relationships with people. Now, this will have for those who are more relationship people, not people who are that much into mitzvahs, right? So you got to be careful, when you see somebody doing something or saying something, don't get caught up in the superficialities. When you're having a discussion with a person, when you hear what a person's saying, don't just take what they say at face value. Let's say a spouse comes home and starts yelling at the other spouse. So now, if you're an external person, if you're a body person, then what's your reaction? That person yelled at me. That person was not nice. I'm not happy that they did that, and I'm going to tell them I'm not happy, and I'm going to get them. That's the person who doesn't wear tzitzis. If you wear tzitzis, you say, now, I see what's going on superficially. Now, that's not the reality. That is not the reality. Okay? So now you say, dear, you really appear to be very upset. Would you like to talk about what happened in the day that's caused you to be so upset? That's looking beneath the surface. And you have to be trained. You have to train yourself to look that way, because normally you don't want to do that. Normally the person yelled at you, instant response. What are you doing to yell at me? I was being a good boy. What are you yelling at me for? You're always picking on me. That's dealing external to external. You have to deal internally. It's the way you look, the way you see. There must be a reason why she's upset. I didn't do anything. And she'll start telling you it was a terrible day at work. My boss told me this. Instead of you saying, you don't love me because you yell at me, you say, you really do love me, but, work was tough, so I understand. But not to go with that first thing, right? So you see, the point we're trying to make is that mitzvahs are not just onerous jobs and challenges that God gives you, but God is giving you mitzvahs to help you to have a successful life, And that's where Lashon Hara. You see, this whole Parshas is about Lashon Hara. Last week's Parshas is Lashon Hara. This week's Parshas, next week's all Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara. So what's the cure for Lashon Hara? Tzitzis is the cure for Lashon Hara. Almost all Lashon Hara is based on superficially looking at things in life. You take a look at one aspect, make a caricature out of that, and you ignore the rest. That's what Lashon Hara basically is, isn't it? You see a person did one thing bad, and everybody has to know about it. That's looking at things superficially. Internally, the person is really a pretty good person, so they made a mistake. But all Lashon Hara is driven by this. So now, why do women not have this mitzvah? After all is said and done, it's such an amazing mitzvah. Why do women have this mitzvah? So the answer is very simple. And the women know the answer, because every morning they break the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shasani kirtzano. You made me according to your desires. Which simply means a woman innately has a bina yasera, has a clearer ability to look beneath the surface. God gave women a free spiritual gift. It's called inner depth. They come into this world with it, for reasons that we don't have time to get into right now. But that's clearly according to the Torah. Women have bina yasera. God gives them an automatic to be able to do this. Men do not have it. Men come in, now women have other liabilities, which we'll talk about at another time. All males come into this world with a liability. The liability is, they're like, problem is they're scientists. They're scientists. What's a scientist? Scientist only deals with what you can see. Just on what's observable. And like all scientists, make decisions based on what they see, which is not, if you're a scientist and you're looking for hundreds of years of research till you come to a result, that's fine. But you're dealing with relationships and misaveris, that's not fine being a male scientist in Judaism. I see a piece of treif ham, it tastes good, I'm going to eat it. That's what the scientist concludes. You come to a party, you just see what's, your wife says to you, how was the party? It was a great party. Yeah, tell me about the party. Oh, they had chicken, they had roast, they had this, they had that. They said 3 speeches, this and that. I said, anything else? No, that was the whole party. So I said, I don't know about you. I was at the same party. I see 3 couples are getting divorced. I said, what are you talking about? Look the way they were sitting next to each other. Look the way they weren't talking to each other. There's big problems over there. I was just, you're crazy. You know what you're talking about. And then you find later 3 couples are getting divorced. How do women know that? Because she's not just looking at what you see, she's looking at beneath that. God gave them a great power. No question about it. That's the same reason why God gave the woman the role to raise the family. Because the husband will be incompetent in that area. So now I want to ask you a question. If you're a person who has a perfect height, perfect weight, perfect build, perfect body, and someone says to you, I think you should go to Weight Watchers, would you consider that an insult? Yes. So if God created the woman spiritually perfect in terms of inner gaze, why in the world would they need to wear tzitzis? As if to suggest that they're not competent in this area? You see. So this is the irony of the women's liberation movement. The irony of it. The ladies who want to put on tzitzis. You know why they want to put on tzitzis? Because they're doing the opposite of what it's all about. Now, there are certain aspects of women's liberation which is fair. Women should get paid as much as men are paid. That's reasonable. But for a woman to think she should be like a man, that is the worst thing that could happen in the world. It's a fine line you got to carry here. No, we should be everything just like a man. I understand where it's coming from. The secular male controlled world was abusive to women and wasn't proper, although Judaism never was that way. But the secular, non-Jewish world was that way. They were controlling the women, and it's a backlash of hundreds of years, which I understand totally why they're feeling that way. But Jewish women have to be awfully careful not to get sucked into this. You're right, if a Jewish woman happens to be an accountant, she should get paid the same thing as a man. Well, that's only fair. That part makes a lot of sense. But for a woman to say, I'm just like a man, it means I'm going to dress like a man, walk like a man, as brash as a man, I'm going to corporate offices like a man, I'm going to walk and talk. You know what you're going to become, woman? You're going to become a man. You're going to lose that inner gaze. And that's the great danger. That's the great danger. And therefore, God says, so a woman who says, I want to put on a towel so I'll be just like a man, is compromising who she is. It's like the person who's, like I said, the person who has a perfect figure says, if you don't let me into Weight Watchers, I'm going to get a class action suit. So what do you need it for? Why waste your time? You got other things to do in your life. Right? The woman has the bina yasser, but she can lose it she can lose it. And that's their mitzvah. And I wonder which mitzvah does a woman have to make sure they don't lose their bina yisera, that extra inner gaze. What mitzvah do they have? Tznius. Modesty. There's a reason why a woman has to be dressed modestly. So she'll never lose the beautiful treasure God gave her. God gave a woman with a spiritually powerful inner gaze to know that what's outside does not count at all. And that's how she's able to raise the children properly. And when the husband yells at her, she understands that's not what my husband means. He's had a tough day. He really loves me. And when my children are throwing tantrums, that's not what they really mean. We need a good talking together. We need to talk it out and get his feelings out. That's what a mother's all about. It's not, well, I'm too busy to talk to you out there. I have a carpool and I have this and I've got my client and I have this and I have that. I'm not saying women can't be busy and they have to be busy, but they also have to make time for their kids. Well, I got my career, just like Dad has a career. We both have the careers. The nanny will go talk to the nanny. That'll help you a lot. No, so now the woman, where does it show? It shows in the tznius. When you start revealing more of your body, what is that saying? I'm identifying with the body. That's the problem. So what men are struggling to accomplish with tzitzis, a woman has it, but they better not lose it. If a woman loses it, then it's her own fault. Now, I'm not saying there are challenges. There's great Yetzer Haras out there when the whole world tells you that you don't have to go around with any clothes and you're just like a man. And for a Jewish woman to say that's not correct, I'm very happy the way I am because I already know I don't need any rights because I'm already better than the men. I don't need to get sick. I don't need to be placated. Hashem already said it. I don't need to do anything more. I need to do with what talents I have to do what I have to do. But what the wife has to make sure, A, is the tznius, B, to make sure the husband's wearing tzitzis. And we're not talking about tzitzis anymore. You see, it's beyond the tzitzis. It's how you look at life. And that's the whole point of this parsha. How do you look at life? Do you look at life from a deeper perspective, from a superficial perspective? And we got it that God gives us certain mitzvahs to help us. So a man who's coming from a point of deficiency, every time you put the tzitzis on, a man's supposed to say, I'm putting the tzitzis on, and with asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvosav, you sanctified us with these mitzvahs. There is now a spiritual energy that you are going to put into these tzitzis, that when I wear this, and I keep thinking about it, and day after day after day, I will not be a man who has to look at pretty women anymore. And I will be satisfied with my wife. And my wife will not feel that she has to give herself all kinds of beauty treatments or I'll be looking at other women. That's what he should be thinking when he's putting on tzitzis. And the wife should be making sure the husband's putting on tzitzis. If you're a smart woman, you want your husband wearing tzitzis. You don't want your husband having a superficial relationship with you. And they should be kosher tzitzis. If they're not kosher, tzitzis doesn't help either. And you put a little scarf around you Saturday morning, that ain't tzitzis. You put a little pair when you were a 4-year-old, you have to have a big pair. It has to cover up the majority. If I take my shirt, you see it goes all the way down to my belt. People, especially in the summertime, especially with teenagers, it's a big problem. The kids say, it's so hot, I can't wear my tzitzis. But the time you have to wear tzitzis more than any time else is in the summertime. And that's going to say the Hasidim, the way the Hasidim, they wear a huge, thick, they wear it over the shirts. You say, boy, that looks weird. No, he looks like a policeman. Now, we, Mistagdim, we wear it under our shirt. But the Hasidim, they got a shirt, and then comes the big pair of tzitzis over the top, and then they wear the jacket. The tzitzis are right out there for everybody to see. And there's a lot of logic to that. Torah says, reasons, they got to see them. Okay, so we're happy by seeing them over here. That's not the best. But the Hasidim will wear them out, so they have a little bit more control of what they're seeing. Right? And the summertime, when it's bigger taivas, that's when you really need it most. And that's when the Yetzer says, no, it's too hot. It's too hot, I can't wear it. Okay, right, if you're in the gym and you're sweating up and that, okay, I could hear leniencies to now. If you're going swimming, you don't have to wear tzitzis. Right? But just because it's a hot day and you're walking in the street not to wear tzitzis, that's when you bedafka need it. And a woman should be to thank Hashem that you already have this and don't lose it. Don't lose it. And you'll see next week's Parsha what happened to Korach's wife who lost it, and the other one's wife who didn't lose it. Korach got himself into all this trouble because he had a wife who looked at things superficially. He came home bald. The Levim got their head checked. Moshe made fun of you. Didn't realize he didn't make fun of you. He was exalting you. When On Ben Pelish's wife had a deeper gaze and kept her husband alive. So that's why it's a very appropriate class for everybody. Hashem should give us especially this time of year. This time of year, if you're reading these Parshas, they're rife with Lashon Hara. They're rife with superficialities. And Hashem says, I know you need something this time of year to get out of this problem. So Hashem says the concept of tzitzis will help us.